Good morning, everybody. This is Danny from Deep South Homestead with Porch Time this morning. Guys, the weather's kind of still cold. We're getting into that time of the year when everything is about to transition, and that is a good thing. We're getting ready to go into spring. Winter seems like it lasts forever sometimes, but in reality, depending on where you live at in the country, sometimes it's short, sometimes it's very long. And I know everybody's anxiously awaiting Puxatani to see if the groundhog sees his shadow and stuff like that. And of course, down in the Deep South, we don't have to worry about that. It's what they always say about the weather here. If you don't like it, just hang around. It's going to change. 2 days ago, it was almost 80 degrees. And now the morning temps is already back to 30 and 31. So it's just the way the South works. The North, one thing about y'all, you get cold, you stay cold. You get snow on the ground, it stays there. Down here, we never get adapted to either. It's either cold or it's hot, cold and hot, cold and hot, and it just fluctuates constantly back and forth, and life is a battle down here. And I guess that's why the insects really thrive as well as they do down here. But guys, today, I want us to stop and think about something. I want us to stop and think about our home. That's something we hardly ever talk about anymore, is our home. Do you realize a house is just a place for most people to lay their head now? I mean, if you stop and think about it, you really don't spend any time there anymore. What is the difference between now and our forefathers? I've been doing some research into this, and I'm just blown away. Who is stealing our time? Why can't we get as much done? Now, we live longer today, and we get less done than our forefathers did, and their life expectancy was a lot shorter than ours. I have read up on this and studied up on it. I'm just amazed at all the stuff I'm coming across. As I was looking, you always hear this phrase, home is where the heart is. Well, that is not exactly how it was actually written in the beginning. When that phrase was penned, that is not how it was penned. It was penned like this: home is where the hearth is. Because everybody used to gather around the fireplace, which was in the center of the house, and home was where the hearth was. That's where everything happened, was right around that focal point. And I began to look at how the homes were built. Homes today are not built anything like what they used to be built. Used to, a house was built in a square or a rectangle. The fireplace was it was huge, and it was put right smack in the center of the house. Used to, when you seen an old-fashioned home sitting against the silhouette of a sunset, you would see a square or a rectangle-shaped house with a big giant fireplace sticking right up out of the middle of it. That was just a common sight. And when I've been up north a lot, I've lived up there a little bit, and I spent a lot of time up there. I've worked, and I noticed Pennsylvania is one of the places, and I've been all in Connecticut working, in Massachusetts and places like that, New York, upper state New York, things like this, and Vermont. You still see some of those old homes. I think they call them salt box homes or something like that. They're sitting around, and the fireplace is in the center of them. Guys, houses were built totally different than they are now. Now it's about how cut up can I make a house. I mean, my house is a prime example. I'm sitting here. I have 4, 5, 6. I have 6 valleys in the roof of my house. I have 3 hips. 3 gables. 2 gables. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hips on the roof of my house. And I designed that roof. I drew my own house plans and everything. And my house is offset in all kind of different ways and shapes and everything like that, because that's what I was building at the time when I built that. And gosh, if I'd just known what I know now, I would have built it totally different. That house is so hard to heat and cool because it's got so many offsets in it. The ceilings are, 12 foot in one room, 11 foot in another room, 10 foot in one room, 9 foot, 8 foot, and they go up and down tray ceilings and, all kind of octagon shaped ceilings and octagon rooms, all this kind of stuff in there. And guys, that's not practical. When I built the cabin over here, the fireplace is on the end of it here. It's a long rectangle. When I build a fire, the heat just goes straight through it. It will come warm the whole cabin in no time. Yeah, there's things to be learned as you get older. Or if we would just study history. The home is where the hearth is. All of the activities of the house used to take place around the fireplace, which was in the center of the house. Many of them had a built-in oven inside the fireplaces. Not only did they cook on a swing arm in the actual fireplace, you could almost walk into some of these fireplaces. They were so tall and so big. And guys, I had to wave my arm. This big bird come into my pond wanting to eat my fish. But there's so many things that we don't take into consideration. Reading some of the articles that once wintertime, or let's say fall, began in one of the old homes like that, the Dutch oven was hung in the fireplace because houses were designed different. Out from the house was out from the house was a breezeway that went out to what was called a summer kitchen where a wood stove was at. Because heating and cooking during the summer months would just heat the house up way too much. So they had a wing out on, and it was on the north side of the house. And the cooking was all done out there. But once fall started and it began to cool down, in order to keep the house warm, the fire was lit, and the Dutch oven was put on a swing arm and put into the fireplace, and they cooked in a Dutch oven. And it's been said that from fall till spring, that Dutch oven never really cooled off. That when a meal was finished for the day, and there was some left in the Dutch oven, whatever was left over was put back into the Dutch oven, and the next day, a few more things were added from the kitchen garden or from the storage or whatever, and they just made another tasting soup or roast or whatever was in the pot. They just amended it, and it took on a different flavor the next day. And they did this all winter long. The fire never actually went out in the fireplace. Now, the funny thing about these houses are the roofs were built different. Because see, we think that solar is something new today. Solar is not new. Our forefathers knew more about solar than we thought they did, because houses were placed in accordance to weather. The north side of the house had a long slope that went almost to the ground, probably about 6 foot from the ground. The south side was very high, usually 2 stories, and had a very short, steep roof on it. And the reason for that is when the cold north wind would blow, it would hit that roof and it would run up it. And as it went over the top of the roof, it would help create a draft out the fireplace to help pull the smoke up the fireplace. And that wall that was over there, that 6 foot high wall on the north side, lots of times they piled corn shucks, hay, all kinds of different stuff up against that wall to keep the cold north wind from penetrating the house on that side. That's where they stored their hay and different things like that at. And the south side was usually a lot of windows on that side. And as the sun in the wintertime would move south, then the sun would shine through those windows, and solar activity would heat the house during the day. In the summertime, the sun would move back north and be over that large sloping part, and all the glass side of the house where the sun was used to coming in the wintertime no longer came in that side, so the house stayed cooler. And when you open the windows, you got a draft up through the house because of the long slope on one side and the short slope on the other side. I mean, I've read about all this stuff, and it's amazing to look at some of the pictures of the homes. What the attics were actually used for, it just blows your mind. If I was able to build me another new home, I probably would go with the design of our forefathers because it just makes sense. Parts of the attic was used to hang vegetables in to dry on the northern side where that big long slope was. They had exposed beams and stuff up in there where they could hang stuff like fruits and peppers and all these kind of things, corn and stuff like this to dry. And guys, that's where they done a lot of their drying. Now, they didn't actually hang meat and stuff like that up in there, although meat was usually kept in cellars and stuff like that where the temperatures remained a constant temperature. But there's so much to learn from our past. And we wonder, why don't I have time to do what anybody else done? We talked about in the beginning of the video how that we have less time to get things done, even though we live longer, and our forefathers lived shorter lives, but they got more done. Well, there's some reasons behind that I've discovered. First off, they never left home. They stayed home all the time. Secondly, do you realize there was some math done on this? The average, now this is an average, this is, some people spend more, some people less, but this is an average, a national average. A person will spend 100 8-hour days sitting in a vehicle commuting back and forth to work. Now this is just going to work. This is not going to the grocery store, this is not going shopping, this is not going to visit someone, this is just going to work. 100 days, 100 8-hour days of your life is spent sitting behind the steering wheel of a vehicle just going to work. Now that's an average. Some people it's a lot more. Me, it was a lot more in my life because I've done a lot more traveling. Some people, a lot less because they live close to work. But that's an average. Totally shocking. 800 hours of my life in an average person's life is spent sitting behind the steering wheel, driving back and forth to work. Homes used to be built to where they had character. Homes used to be built where they was a place you wanted to spend all your time at. Today, people spend anywhere from, I don't even know the price now. I mean, when I was in construction, anywhere from $150,000 to $1 million. I built houses over $1 million. They built these houses, and they couldn't wait to get away from them, to go on a vacation, to go somewhere. They never spent time at home. The only time the average person is at home is when they go to sleep at night. They're either at work, or they're off in a mall, or they're off shopping. They're off doing something, taking a vacation. They can't wait to take a vacation to get away from their home. Totally blows me away. Me and Wanda, we made a pact with each other when we got married. We was going to create our homestead to be our vacation spot. So we didn't have to leave. Because when you leave and you go somewhere else, nothing gets done. So that's more time lost on a homestead. Now, Wanda and I come over, we spend time at the cabin, we relax over here. Most people think, oh my God, do y'all ever rest? Yeah, we rest. It's just that we don't spend hours upon hours upon hours. We don't even turn our TV on. I mean, we have a TV in the house. It's only there for hurricane season, and we turn it on to watch where the hurricanes is at when our internet goes down. It gets turned on maybe once or twice a year. The TV does not play constantly. I would go stark raving crazy if I had to be in a house with a TV playing. I mean, that would drive me, I probably would just lose it, just to be honest with you, because of the constant noise. And yet some people can't function without constant noise. And that's sad, because those are the ones that's lost the true meaning of what it means to be still and to know that I'm God. Because God tells us to be quiet, to listen. And when that TV, it's funny, Wanda and I were talking about this when we were teenagers. It was called the One-Eyed Monster. It was called Satan. It was called all kind of things. You know, when satellite first come out when we were growing up, we were talking about this the other day. It was this big old huge dish. The thing was probably 10 feet in diameter. You know, it looked like something you would see at a space station or something, sticking out there, this big long point sticking out in front of it. Put up in the yard out there, this thing looked like it was huge. You could take it off of that and put it in a pond and probably float around it like a boat. But boy, people, man, we got satellite, and you didn't have to. And when the remote come out, you know, you didn't have to get up and turn the channels. You know, we used to get, I don't know, 3 or 4 channels or something like that when we had an antenna. And you'd always have somebody out on the front porch turning the antenna saying, "Oh, right there, no, back just a little bit," you know. Bygone days, guys. The things that now, when they came out with the remote antennas at the electric motors, you could sit inside and turn the antenna till you got it just right. Oh, we thought, oh my gosh, we didn't have to go out and turn the antenna. You know, we thought that was the greatest thing in the world. And then satellite come along. All these things that we thought was better, all they were doing was robbing us of our time on our place and our time to get things done. I forget now how many hours it is the average person sits in front of, oh, the boob tube was the other one, sits in front of the boob tube or the one-eyed monster or the TV or whatever you want to call it. I forget how many people, how many hours people sit in front of those things now. It just blows me away. I went with my mother-in-law that passed away back in 2011. I took her to the doctor because I thought she was getting dementia. And when I took her to the doctor to have her tested, the doctor ran a series of tests on her. I mean, he asked her things like who was the president at that time, and you know, what time did she get up in the morning. And right in the middle of that, he just took his hand and waved it in front of her face. And she didn't even move. She just sit there. Her eyes didn't blink or nothing, you know. And he said, "How many hours a day do you watch TV?" And she said, "Well, I don't know, not many." And I said, "Ma'am," I said, "Doc, I got to intervene here." I said, "When she gets up at 8 o'clock in the morning and eats her breakfast, she turns the TV on and she sits in front of it till 8 o'clock at night when she gets ready to go to bed. Now, we'll try to get her out on the porch occasionally during the day, but she's glued to that TV." He said, "I knew when I put my hand in front of her face and she didn't bat an eye and she didn't flinch." He said, "I knew she was watching TV all the time because people become zombies to TV." And he said, "She doesn't have dementia. You just need to get her away from the TV and get her more active outside, if it's nothing but just sitting on the porch." So we did. And her health increased tremendously because she literally couldn't go from the living room to the bedroom without being out of breath. And within a month, my driveway's pretty long. She was going with her walker on my driveway all the way up to the top of my driveway and back. Now she would have to sit down once and come back inside. Her health had increased that much just in a month from not sitting in front of the TV all the time because I refused to turn it back on. I didn't mind her watching the news in the evening or something like that, but I refused. I took it away from her, basically. I hated to do that, but, you know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do because it was robbing her of the quality of her life. And that's what's happening today in our country. We're being robbed of our life and the quality of our life and the time that we need to do things because of things that we think are making our life better, when in reality they're not. They're actually robbing us of ourselves, of everything. You know, once upon a time, people loved living on a homestead. It was a full-time. I can tell you from experience. When I retired, gosh, I don't even know how many years it's been now. It's back in 2010. I retired at 50 years old, and not because I wanted to, but because of health reasons. It was then that I actually began to realize, you know, I didn't have the money that I really needed to be able to afford a lot of things that I needed to do. And I realized that if I was going to survive, I was going to have to do a lot of stuff here on my place. I was going to have to raise my own food. I was going to have to raise my own meat. I was going to have to do a lot of things here. And I did my best. I've always been a homesteader my whole life, but I did my best to start providing for myself. And we did a lot of canning. We canned tons of stuff. And my wife, before she passed away, she became a couponer. And we really began to stock up on stuff that I didn't know any better at the time, but it was actually killing us, you know. And some of it was, some of it wasn't. Things like aluminum foil, saran wrap, toothpaste, you know, these kind of things, feminine hygiene products and stuff that she needed, razors, things of this nature. You know, these are things that it was necessary, and they end up being a good deal. But it wasn't until then that I realized how much time we actually lose because we quote unquote comply to the new society that man has created. It's normal now to be in debt. Everybody thinks that you're supposed to be in debt, and that's not true. It's not scriptural. The Bible says we're not to be in debt. And everybody goes, well, how can you not be in debt? Well, it just takes discipline. And at 40 years old, I lost everything I had. I had a house that was paid for. I owned lots of land, everything. And I don't mind saying this. I went through a divorce. Ended up giving my house to my ex-spouse, which I didn't mind because my kids needed a place to live. I was in the construction business. It didn't bother me. As a matter of fact, I gladly did it. And it was a 2-story house paid for. I gave her land and all. Didn't have a problem with that. I kept land that had notes and stuff that was added on it. I just thought that was the best thing to do. And at 40, I ended up with nothing. I had to start all over again. And guys, it can be done. If y'all have ever listened to my story, I don't regret anything I did in the past. I don't regret giving my house away. I don't regret any of that because I felt like it's what needed to be done. My parents got highly upset at me because I didn't force the judge to sell everything and me get half of it, but I really didn't care. The point being is I started over with nothing and ended up having to go almost $200,000 in debt. I bought a mobile home, which I did not want to live in a mobile home. I don't have anything against people who do live in mobile homes. It's just not what I wanted to do. I live in a hurricane zone, and I did not want to be in a mobile home. So I had a manufacturer build me a mobile home to my specs, and I stayed in it, I think, probably 3 years. And I sold it and built my home that I have now. And I paid for it as much as I could. I ended up selling off some of my land to be able to get out from under some of the payments because I was so deep in debt at that moment. And to be able to work on this house. But guys, I spent the next 7 years. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't go out on the weekends. We didn't order out. We didn't eat pizzas. We didn't eat junk. We raised our food. 7 years I paid myself out of debt. People wonder why Wanda and me can do what we do here at Deep South Homestead. I haven't had a house payment since 2004. Now, well, actually a little bit past. 2004 is when I finished the house. 2007 is when I paid everything off. Since 2007, I haven't had a house payment. And today, the average person where we live at will spend anywhere from, I don't know, I think it's running now around $600 a month up to $1,800 a month for house payments. And to me, that's just, after I went through those 7 years of it, I was like, no, Danny's not doing this. No. And so Wanda and I haven't had a house payment since 2007. And that's how come we can do things that we do today. It's called saving. It's called not being a person who wants instant gratification when you do something. Lots of people can't wait. They're like, oh my God, I just can't wait. And they go out and they buy stuff and they just get deep in debt because they want it right now. That is not how you get ahead in life. Because if you do that, then what happens, the rest of the years of your life, people finance a home for 30 years, which I'm like, oh my God, why would anybody even do that? But you sit back for the next 30 years of your life, you are a slave to that lender. And the Bible says the borrower is servant to the lender. He said, don't do it. So that's how Wanda and I can do everything that we do. We save our money. And when we want to do a project, then we do it. And we pay cash for it because that's how it's supposed to. That's how the American dream works. Now, granted, the American dream is very difficult today. I will say this. The young people coming up will never have the opportunities that we had. They just won't have it. It's just not going to be feasible for them. That's why, if there's any way possible, you can buy land now. Even if you don't do anything with it, buy it if you can afford to, so that your kids have a place to live in the future. With the agendas that's going on in the country and the world, is to take away everything that we own. And they're saying by 2030 or 2035 or something like that, we're not going to own anything and we're going to be happy to not own anything. I can't see that being me. I cannot. I'm not saying that it won't happen. I'm just saying I can't see that being me being happy not owning anything. Now they may tax us to death and all this kind of stuff, and I do get that. And it will become very difficult and very hard. But you know what? Mankind has existed throughout the centuries under tyranny and has always prevailed. And I think as long as we trust the Lord and what the Lord has for us, guys, we can make better use of our time, we can make better use of our assets, and we can actually live what I call scripturally, the way the Bible says we're to live. And we can enjoy our lives a lot better when we figure out what's robbing us of all of our time. And I think we'll find out that most of the things that's robbing us of our time is modern conveniences like cell phones. All you got to do is go somewhere and watch people's cell phones. They're sitting there constantly doing this. They're locked on a cell phone. You know, they can't lay it down. It has become the new one-eyed monster, if you will. So guys, I know today hadn't been anything, really elaborate. It was just basically trying to help us to realize how our homes have changed, how our lives have changed, how come we don't have the time to do the things we used to do. I'm going to talk more about this over on Patreon, but there's so much that we've lost and we don't even realize that we've lost it. So have a blessed day, guys, and thank y'all for watching us here at Deep South Homestead. Thank you.